and a major step towards putting the nightmare behind us. A reckless vandal slashes tyres on 50 cars in Moonee Ponds, costing residents thousands. A Melbourne East real estate agent accused of helping an Albanian crime gang grow cannabis in rental houses. An unbelievable mess across Florida as Hurricane Ian strikes with deadly force, and it's not over. A scammer intercepted Bill's invoice and pocketed 26 grand. Now he's fighting his bank to get it back. And Sheed's the only dissenter as Brad Scott lands at the hangar for the first time.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Peter Hitchener.
Good evening. The pandemic emergency is all but over. National Cabinet has agreed from October 14, Australians who catch COVID will no longer be forced to isolate. Payments for missing work will also be scrapped, except anyone in critical industries who must still take 5 days off. State political reporter Mark Santomartino.
National Cabinet's decision was unanimous.
We are changing our position based upon changing advice and changing circumstances.
Prime Minister Albanese agreed with every state and territory leader. Australians will no longer be forced to isolate after testing positive for COVID.
It does not in any way suggest that the pandemic is finished.
What must finish, according to Professor Paul Kelly, is the emergency response. Today, anyone who catches COVID must stay home for 5 days. In 2 weeks, from October 14, that gets cut to 0. Infected Australians can move about as they wish, and support will dry up for those who choose to stay home from work.
It isn't sustainable for government to pay people's wages forever.
Payments will continue for infected workers in healthcare, aged and disability care, who must all continue to stay home from work for 5 days.
Scrapping mandatory isolation for people who have COVID has the potential to unleash another wave and tip a teetering health system over into crisis again.
Professor Steve Robson says COVID will return in waves, releasing hidden wait lists compiled by the Australian Medical Association. Victorians are waiting more than 900 days for an urgent neurosurgery appointment when they should be seen in 30. And the time to see an ophthalmologist or orthopaedic specialist has blown out to 700 days.
To say that this is just a COVID problem or caused only by the pandemic is simply not true.
This is a situation that is not unique to Victoria.
In hard hats and high-vis, Marianne Thomas responded to reports from Victoria's Independent Pandemic Management Advisory Committee, refusing its request to release data gathered by the Department of Premier and Cabinet, which spent millions surveying opinion on COVID restrictions.
We do not want to release information that may identify or people or businesses.
The state's pandemic orders are set to expire on October 12, but the isolation rule changes won't happen until the 14th of October. So those orders will have to be extended to match that or go further and to make sure sick workers stay away from vulnerable Victorians.
It does not mean that we have somehow magically changed the infectiousness of this virus.
Mark Santomartino, 9 News.
A knife-wielding vandal has gone on a tyre-slashing spree in Moonee Ponds, damaging dozens of vehicles across several streets. Furious car owners have told Reid Butler they're worried he may strike again.
He's the tyre-slashing Night Stalker. Armed with a knife and acting alone, the man targeted as many as 50 vehicles in Moonee Ponds.
I've had 3 cars affected. I can put a spare on one, but the mother-in-law's one has got 2 tyres out, so we can't drive that, and tyre shop doesn't have any of those tyres either.
Electrician Sam Pavlovich had his 2 work vans attacked. The estimated cost?
Probably about 2,000, I'd say, with loss of time and also the cost.
The tyre slasher struck around 9 last night and he covered some ground.
Salisbury Street, Buckley Street, Primrose Street and also Lawson Street.
Lucky no one got hurt because he did have a knife, didn't he?
By afternoon, the slasher's path of damage was clear. The neighbours unlucky enough to fall victim, spending hours working to replace or fix the punctured tyres. The RACV on hand to help and kept very busy.
The offender's handiwork is everywhere you look. Clearly, he was on a mission. But the question is, why?
We don't believe it's targeted in any way.
Why? What are they getting? by slashing the tyres.
This was vandalism with no rhyme or reason.
Victoria Police are very confident that we will locate this offender and he will be prosecuted for the crime.
Locals hoping that happens quickly in case he returns tonight.
It's a bit of a worry to think who's lurking around at night and what are they getting up to.
Anyone who has vision or knows more should contact police. Reid Butler, 9 News.
A Melbourne East real estate agent has faced court accused of acting on behalf of an Albanian crime syndicate. As Penelope Leash reports, he's one of 6 people arrested in an AFP operation targeting rental properties used to grow cannabis.
Giuseppe Joe Tamino, a Melbourne East real estate agent accused of identifying rental properties to be used as grow houses by an Albanian drug syndicate. Police allege Tamino targeted properties owned by overseas investors, knowing they wouldn't be inspected in person. Raiding 4 houses in Keysborough and Burwood East, Australian Federal Police allegedly uncovered more than 140 kilograms of cannabis as part of Operation Ironside.
Information from Operation Ironside has seen the AFP, with the assistance of Victoria Police, dismantle yet another alleged criminal syndicate.
A total of 6 people arrested. Police allege the ringleader, a 36-year-old Aspendale Gardens man, had an encrypted device, designer watches and $270,000 hidden in his ceiling. It's alleged 59-year-old Mr Tamino assisted the group between March 2019 and August this year. Tamino faced the Melbourne Magistrates Court today for a filing hearing. His bail extended. He'll be back in court in November.
It's very likely that these illicit drugs would have been distributed across Victoria by criminals associated with serious and organised crime.
Penelope Leash, 9 News.
Shell-shocked residents of Florida are returning to utter devastation in the wake of Hurricane Ian. At least 12 deaths have been confirmed, but the President has warned the final toll will be substantial. Alison Petrowski has the latest.
Florida woke up stuck in a nightmare. Unreachable by road, the view from above devastating. In Fort Myers, homes have been washed away, crushed or inundated. The landscape is littered with debris, trees smashed apart, strewn around like matchsticks. As daylight arrived, so did the people who fled. Jean Butler was one of those coming back to see what's left.
I did not think it would be like this. I mean, our whole house, the water, there's so much water in there, it's not livable. It's still just devastating. It's like, so yeah, we love you too, Australia. Thank you so much for caring about us.
Almost everywhere, there's water. Where it's subsided, now a dumping ground. While the scale of the damage is obvious, the human toll of this tragedy is still unclear.
This could be the deadliest hurricane in Florida's history.
But there are remarkable tales of survival.
You're okay, you stay right there, bud.
This man pulled out from the debris on Fort Myers Beach, still alive after being buried for almost 24 hours. Even for the lucky ones, it was terrifying. Emily Delaney was woken up by her parents as the torrent raged outside her home.
It was so scary, so scary. I mean, I didn't know how high it was going to come up.
This area bore the brunt of Ian when it made landfall. I can hear a siren on this boat. There's a second boat, third boat, 4, 5, 6, countless boats thrown up from the marina onto land. And we're seeing remarkable scenes like this, block after block, kilometre after kilometre, right through the town.
When you decide to ride it out, you know, you kind of know what you're expecting.
Sanibel Island had been connected to Fort Myers by road, but not anymore. The governor here says Hurricane Ian was a storm of biblical proportions, a 1 in 1,000-year event, and its impact will be felt well into the future. Fort Myers is expected to be without power for a month.
We obviously will rebuild, but that's not something that will happen overnight.
Despite all of this, as Ian bared down on central Orlando, some residents still couldn't be swayed to get out of its path.
What good does it do for me to leave?
Briefly weakening into a tropical storm, Ian is once again classified as a hurricane and is barrelling towards South Carolina. In the days ahead, the President will visit impacted areas, lending his support to a community that needs it.
All everybody needs is a hug and, you know.
In Fort Myers, Alison Petrowski, 9 News.
4 occupied territories of Ukraine will officially be incorporated into Russia later this evening. Vladimir Putin is planning a special ceremony to sign the treaty at the Kremlin and a big rally in Moscow's Red Square. Karianne Greenbank has more.
Hours from proclaiming the largest land grab since World War II, Vladimir Putin tells security officials the process of forming a fairer world order is happening before our eyes. Part of that vision about to be formalised when he'll sign into Russian law the annexation of 4 occupied territories of Ukraine.
It has no place in the modern world. It must not be accepted.
The escalation follows a week of so-called referendums organised by Moscow and declared a sham by the West.
Говорят сами за себя.
The people have stated firmly their wish to forever tie their fate to our country, says the Russian Foreign Ministry. Not so for these Ukrainians fleeing Russian-held Zaporizhia.
We are not going to fight against Ukraine. We're patriots.
And for Russians dodging the draft, options are running out, with Finland shutting its borders.
The entry of Russian citizens endangers Finland's international relations.
In Ukraine, the war rages on, Russia pounding the city of Dnipro with missiles. An estimated 60 homes were damaged. Some have completely disappeared. Less than 24 hours ago, a family home had been standing right here where this huge crater is now. Authorities say an 8-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl had been sleeping inside the home when the missiles struck. They were both killed. Yana lives next to the blast site. Her windows blew out and she briefly lost her hearing. Everything was flying everywhere, she tells us. I'm still scared now. Neighbour Elena saying, what is the reason for this attack on civilians? A question being asked by many here as locals join humanitarian efforts to repair what they can. Well, this is the second night of major missile strikes here on the city of Dnipro, and this time it struck a bus depot. You can see behind me it's a scene of utter carnage here. Investigators have been combing through the debris, but we've been told at least 60 buses were completely destroyed when the explosion sparked a huge fire. Meanwhile, outside the neighbouring city of Zaporizhia, a Russian missile strike targeted a convoy of cars. Authorities say 23 people were killed in that strike, all of them civilians. These attacks come as Vladimir Putin signs an independence decree for those Russian-controlled territories of Zaporizhia and Kherson, which paves the way for annexation in the coming hours.
Anne Greenbank reporting. 3 men who dragged a 44-year-old to the ground before robbing him in the CBD on September 13 are yet to be caught. The man was walking along the Prince's Bridge just before 9 p.m. when he was threatened and then attacked. Federal police have promised to protect customers who've had personal details exposed by the Optus hack. A task force has been launched to catch the cyber criminals as the telco agreed to pay for replacement passports. Hayley Francis with today's developments.
It's arguably the biggest data breach in Australian history. More than 10 million Optus customers exposed to cyber criminals. Those most at risk of identity theft now shielded by Operation Guardian.
The 10,000 individuals who potentially had 100 points of identification released online will be prioritised.
The new task force will offer added protection against cybercriminals as investigators track down the hacker and others trying to exploit those who've had their driver's licence, Medicare and passport details stolen.
Cybercrime is the break and enter of the 21st century. And we encourage all Australians to be extra vigilant about their online security.
The advice, look out for any suspicious activity across online accounts. If you spot anything, report it immediately to your bank. Do not click on any links via email or SMS claiming to be from Optus. If you receive a call from someone offering to help you with the data breach, consider hanging up and contacting the organisation yourself. And if anyone requests your passwords or access to your computer, always say no. Investigators say Optus is working closely with them as part of this investigation involving international agencies like the FBI. As for the telco's tarnished reputation, today one small step towards repair.
They will cover the costs of replacing affected customers' passports.
I think that's entirely appropriate.
Hayley Francis, 9 News.
Hawthorn President Jeff Kennett has labelled racism claims against the club horrific, breaking his silence on last week's disturbing report. Writing to members, he said the claims were heartbreaking and that a solution must be found quickly. The coaches at the centre of the allegations, Alastair Clarkson and Chris Fagan, have vehemently denied any wrongdoing. Newly unveiled Essendon coach Brad Scott says he's ready to roll up his sleeves to guide the club back to the top. But the appointment hasn't pleased everyone, with club great Kevin Sheedy revealing he voted for James Hird. Braden Ingram reports.